Every year, my children forgot to visit me on Christmas Day. This year, I bought a beach house for myself. When they showed up with a lawyer to try and take it from me, they thought I was alone. They had no idea, I had cameras, a lawyer of my own, and a witness from the county sheriff's office on my side. My name is Elaine Porter. I'm 69 years old, and this is the story of how my own children tried to erase me from my own life. It was Christmas morning. I woke up early, the way I always did. The air smelled faintly of pine and cold mist from the sea. I brewed my coffee, set the table with the embroidered red tablecloth my mother gave me decades ago, and took out the porcelain plates I'd kept for special occasions. I made everything I used to make when my children were young: roast chicken, warm biscuits, spiced tea. I placed bright poinsettias in the center of the table, they were my favorite. I stared at that table for a long time, listening to the silence. The house was beautiful, but it was quiet in the wrong way, too still, too empty. My phone sat beside my cup. I kept checking it every few minutes, waiting for a message, a call, anything. Nothing. Not even a "Merry Christmas, Mom." I told myself maybe they'd surprise me, maybe they'd knock on the door laughing, saying, "Mom, you didn't think we'd forget Christmas, did you?" But the only sound was the ocean outside, crashing softly against the shore. By noon, the food was cold. I picked up my phone and opened social media. I don't even know why, maybe I just needed to see their faces. And that's when I saw it. Simone had posted a photo. She was smiling at a fancy restaurant, glasses of wine on the table, surrounded by friends, and by her brother, Marcus. The caption read, "Perfect Christmas with the people who matter." The people who matter. I read those words over and over. I wasn't in that picture. I wasn't one of the people who mattered. I looked at the untouched plates, the gifts still wrapped, the red candles burning low. I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring into that silent, decorated house, realizing something had finally broken. That day, I understood what years of silence had been trying to tell me. My children had already left me long before they stopped calling. But what I didn't know yet was that this Christmas, this painful, empty Christmas, was also the beginning of everything changing. Because that was the day I decided I would never spend another Christmas waiting for love that wasn't coming. That Christmas wasn't the first one I spent alone, it was simply the one that opened my eyes. Because the truth is, they had been drifting away from me for years, one holiday, one excuse at a time. Last Christmas, Simone called me on Christmas Eve. "Mama, we have a change of plans," she said with her polished, rushed voice, the one she used when she wanted something but didn't want to talk long. "We're spending the holidays at Marcus's in-laws. His wife's mother isn't feeling well, and they want the whole family together." She paused before adding, "I can come if you really want me to, but it's going to be crowded and far from your place." Her tone made it clear it wasn't really an offer. "I understand," I told her quietly. "You're the best, Mama. We'll bring you your gift later." They never did. I remember that night. The glow from the Christmas lights reflected on the empty plates I'd set out. I turned on the television for company, watched an old film I'd already seen a dozen times, and told myself maybe next year would be different. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't. Because the year before that, it was the same story. On my birthday, I turned 69. Simone sent me a text at 10 at night. "Happy birthday, Mama, birthday cake, God bless you." That was it. No call. No visit. Marcus didn't even send a message. When I finally called him 2 days later, he answered with a tired voice, "Sorry, Mama. It slipped my mind. Been busy at work, you know how it is." That phrase, "you know how it is," became their shield. Their easy way out. But I didn't know how it is. I didn't know when I'd stopped being a person and started being an obligation. In my mind, I kept replaying moments when I mattered, when I was still Mama, the woman they ran to for comfort and warmth. I remembered their scraped knees, the bedtime stories, the nights I stayed awake sewing costumes for their school plays. I remembered pawning my gold bangles to pay for Simone's college tuition. I remembered taking a second job to help Marcus start his small business. Back then, I thought those sacrifices built unshakable love. But over the years, they became invisible, like I was. There were smaller things too, little cuts that never healed. Marcus's birthday in March, I sent him a shirt I'd spent too much on. He replied with 3 words. "Thanks, Mama." Nice. A week later, I saw pictures of his birthday party online, a huge gathering, balloons, cake, laughter. Everyone was there except me. When I asked him about it, he said, "It was last minute, Mama. Didn't want to bother you with the drive." Bother me. That's what I'd become, a bother. Even when I went to my granddaughter Aaliyah's birthday party, I felt it. Simone opened the door, surprised to see me. "Oh, Mama, I didn't know you were coming." She let me in, but her hug was half-hearted, her smile forced. I sat in the corner holding my purse while they all laughed and took selfies. When Aaliyah opened my gift, a doll I had spent too much on, she said, "Another doll," and set it aside. No one thanked me. No one noticed when I left early. I went home that evening, poured myself tea, and stared at the family photos on my wall. The ones from when we still looked happy, back when my house was their home. And for the first time, I let myself ask a question I'd been too afraid to voice all these years: when did I stop being part of their lives? Was it when they got married? When their jobs made them feel too important? Or was it the moment I started needing them more than they needed me? Whatever the reason, by that winter, I understood something no mother ever wants to admit: my children had not forgotten me. They had simply chosen to live without me. That realization hurt deeper than any loneliness ever could. But in that pain, a small spark began to form. A quiet, defiant thought I tried to ignore but couldn't: if they no longer saw me, maybe it was time I learned to see myself again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my living room armchair, the same one where I used to rock my children to sleep when they were babies, and for the first time, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a museum of someone else's life. Every corner whispered memories. The dent in the wall where Marcus once threw a ball too hard. The faded crayon marks on the kitchen doorframe where I used to measure Simone's height every birthday. I ran my fingers over those marks and realized how much time had passed, how much of me had been left behind in this house. I kept asking myself, when did I become invisible to them? Was it after their father left and I stopped smiling as much? Was it when they started families of their own, and I tried too hard to stay close? Or had it happened slowly, quietly, the way a photo fades until one day you realize you can barely see the faces anymore? Whatever the answer, one truth was clear: I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep waiting for phone calls that never came or pretending their absence didn't hurt. I was tired of being the woman who gave everything and received nothing back but silence. That night, I made myself a promise, the kind you whisper out loud just to hear how it sounds. I promised I would stop waiting to be loved. I would stop setting the table for ghosts. I would stop living as if my worth depended on being needed. The next morning, I woke up with the sun pouring through the curtains. Something inside me had shifted. The sadness was still there, but beneath it, there was something new, something that felt almost like peace. I brewed coffee and sat by the window, watching people pass by outside, couples walking their dogs, children pulling sleds, cars gliding past with Christmas ribbons still tied to their antennas. For once, I didn't envy them. I just watched, thinking, if the world can keep moving, maybe I can too. I opened my old laptop, the one Marcus gave me years ago when he bought himself a newer model, and typed into the search bar: beach houses for sale. I didn't know what made me do it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was desperation. But when I saw the photos, little cottages by the ocean, sunlight spilling through wide windows, something stirred inside me. The sea had always called to me. When I was a girl, I dreamed of living near the water, of falling asleep to the sound of waves. For decades, I had saved money for my children. College, weddings, emergencies, all for them. But sitting there that morning, I thought, what if I used that money for me? The thought felt dangerous, almost forbidden, like breaking an unspoken rule of motherhood. But the more I thought about it, the freer I felt. I spent hours scrolling through listings until I saw one that stopped me cold. A small white house by the coast, 2 bedrooms, a sunlit porch, and wide glass windows overlooking the sea. The listing said, $180,000, a peaceful home for new beginnings. My heart raced. A peaceful home for new beginnings. I whispered those words aloud like a prayer. The next day, I called the number. A woman answered, her voice warm, calm, kind. Hello, this is Brenda. How can I help you? I told her I wanted to see the house. When can you come? She asked. Tomorrow, I said without hesitation. And that was it. For the first time in years, I had made a decision for myself. Not for Simone. Not for Marcus. Not for anyone else. That night, I packed a small bag, unable to sleep from the mixture of fear and excitement. I didn't know it yet, but that choice, to take one small step toward the life I deserved, would change everything. Because that was the moment I stopped surviving for others, and started living for me. The next morning, I took the first bus out of the city. The ride was long and quiet, the kind that gives you too much time to think. As the landscape shifted from tall buildings to open skies, I felt something loosening inside me, as if every mile between me and my old life was a mile closer to freedom. By the time the driver announced the final stop, I was nervous. My palms were damp, my heart unsteady. I stepped off the bus and smelled it immediately, the ocean. The air was sharp, clean, full of salt and something new I hadn't felt in years, possibility. The taxi ride from the station was short. When the car turned a corner and I saw the coast, my breath caught in my throat. The sea stretched endlessly, glittering under the late morning sun. And there, at the edge of the road, stood the house from the photos, white walls, pale blue shutters, and a little porch wrapped with wildflowers. A woman was standing in front of it, waving as I approached. You must be Mrs. Porter, she said, her voice gentle and familiar. I'm Brenda. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair tied in a loose bun and eyes that seemed to carry both kindness and experience. She offered her hand, then added, You look like someone who needs a fresh start. I smiled faintly. I think that's exactly what I need. Brenda led me inside, talking softly as she walked. The previous owner was an artist, she painted the sea from that very window. The moment I stepped through the door, I felt it, that quiet, indescribable knowing. The walls were white, the floor a light oak that gleamed in the sun. The living room opened toward a wide glass window facing the waves. I could hear the ocean clearly, not loud, but steady, like a heartbeat. Brenda watched me carefully. It's beautiful, isn't it? I nodded, unable to speak. My throat was tight. I walked slowly through the rooms, 2 small bedrooms, a modest kitchen, a narrow staircase leading to a loft. Everything smelled faintly of lemon and sea salt. When we reached the porch, I turned to her. How much did you say it was? 180,000, she replied. Then she hesitated, studying me. Can I ask you something, Elaine? Of course. Are you running away from something, or running towards something? The question caught me off guard. I thought for a long moment before answering. Both, I said finally. Brenda smiled softly, as though she understood more than I said. Sometimes, that's the only way to start over, by running in both directions at once. I looked back at the sea. The sunlight danced on the water like tiny sparks of forgiveness. I want it, I said quietly. This house. I want it. Brenda blinked. Are you sure? You don't need to rush. I've spent my whole life waiting, I said. I'm done waiting. She nodded, pulled out the paperwork, and handed me a pen. Then let's make it yours. We stood side by side at the small wooden table, signing documents as the waves crashed rhythmically outside. When I finished, Brenda placed her hand gently on mine. Welcome home, Elaine. I didn't expect to cry, but I did. Silent tears, the kind that come not from sadness, but from release. Because in that moment, for the first time in decades, I wasn't someone's mother, or ex-wife, or afterthought. I was just a woman who had finally chosen herself. A week after signing the papers, I was still floating on a quiet kind of happiness. Every morning, I woke to the sound of waves and sunlight spilling through the curtains. I'd sit on the porch with my coffee, watching the fishermen cast their nets and children run along the sand. For the first time in years, I felt alive. I had begun unpacking slowly, one box at a time. Each book, each photograph felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd buried long ago. There was no rush here, no one demanding, "Mom, where's my lunch?" or "Can you watch Aaliyah for the weekend?" Just peace, gentle, healing peace. Then one afternoon, as I was arranging shells along the windowsill, my phone rang. "Elaine?" It was Brenda. Her voice sounded different this time, lower, cautious. "Hi, Brenda. Is everything all right?" "I need to tell you something important," she said slowly. "Can you come by my office tomorrow morning?" The next day, I found her waiting outside a small real estate office downtown. She smiled, but her eyes carried worry. "Let's talk inside." When we sat down, she folded her hands. "I was chatting with a friend of mine, she's a lawyer. I mentioned you bought a house by yourself, and that you have adult children. She told me to warn you, make sure your property is legally protected. Apparently, some families try to claim ownership of their parents' homes, especially when there's money involved." My stomach tightened. "But, this house is mine. I paid for it outright." "I know," Brenda said gently, "but sometimes that doesn't matter. I've seen it happen. A parent buys something with their savings, and suddenly the children say they're worried about mental competence. They go to court, and things get ugly." I stared at her. "My children wouldn't do that." She hesitated. "I'm sure you'd like to believe that. But if there's even a chance they might, you need to protect yourself. My friend can help, her name's Chloe Daniels. She's sharp and kind. Will you meet her?" I nodded, though unease was already creeping into my chest. "Yes, I'll meet her." The following afternoon, I found Chloe's office on the second floor of a quiet building facing the water. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, but her presence was calm, professional. She greeted me with a firm handshake. "Mrs. Porter? Brenda told me about you. Please, have a seat." I told her everything, about my children, the loneliness, the house, and the peace I'd finally found here. She listened without interrupting, only taking notes now and then. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Elaine," she said, "I'm going to be very honest with you. From what you've told me, there are clear signs of emotional neglect and potential financial exploitation. I'm not saying your children will act on it, but the pattern is there, the distance, the guilt, the sudden concern after they learn about your property. I've seen this before." My throat went dry. "What should I do?" "First," she said, "document everything, every call, every message. Keep copies. Second, let's secure the house legally. I'll set up a living trust that leaves no loopholes. And third, install cameras. Not for paranoia, for protection. If anyone ever tries to pressure you or manipulate you, we'll have proof." I hesitated. "Do you really think it's necessary?" "I hope it isn't," Chloe replied softly. "But it's better to be prepared than to be a victim." I left her office with my head spinning. The sea breeze outside felt colder than before. Could my own children really see me as a wallet and not a mother? That night, I stood on the porch, looking at the waves under the moonlight. I didn't want to believe what Chloe said. But deep down, I knew she was right. Because for people who have stopped seeing you, love can sometimes turn into something darker, something greedy. And soon enough, I would find out just how right she was. I moved into the beach house on a warm Tuesday morning. The movers came early, their truck rumbling down the quiet coastal road. They unloaded my modest belongings, a few boxes of books, old framed photos, the same armchair I'd rocked my children in years ago. When the last box was inside, I stood at the doorway and whispered to myself, "This is home now." Closing the door behind me felt like closing a chapter of my life, the one where I kept waiting to be loved by people who had already left me behind. The first days passed peacefully. I learned the rhythm of the tides, the sound of seagulls at dawn, the scent of salt and jasmine drifting through the windows. Brenda came by often, bringing homemade bread and stories about the neighbors. Sometimes, she'd stay for tea on the porch as the sky turned orange over the water. "You seem lighter here," she said one evening. "As if the sea washed away all the noise." I smiled. Maybe it did. Weeks passed. I never told Simone or Marcus that I'd moved. I didn't post pictures or send messages. For once, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. And strangely enough, they didn't ask. Not one call. Not one question about where I was. The silence that used to hurt now felt like protection. Then, one Saturday morning, my peace cracked. I was watering the plants on the porch when my phone buzzed. Simone. Her name flashing on the screen felt like a ghost tapping on my shoulder. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Mama." Her voice was unusually bright, almost rehearsed. "How have you been? We haven't talked in so long." I frowned. "I've been fine, Simone. Why are you calling?" "Oh, just to check on you," she said quickly. "Marcus and I were talking, and we realized we'd barely seen you this year. We'd love to visit. Maybe tomorrow?" It was so sudden, so cheerful, that I froze. "Visit me? After months of silence?" Something wasn't right. "How did you even know where I live?" I asked. There was a small pause before she answered. "We went by your old house. The neighbors said you moved here. They gave us your address." A lie. I hadn't given my address to anyone. "I don't think tomorrow's a good idea," I said cautiously. "I'm busy." "Busy? On a Sunday?" "Oh, come on, Mama. We just want to see you, and your new house. They say it's beautiful, right on the ocean." It must have cost a fortune. Her voice sharpened on those last words, and suddenly everything Chloe had warned me about came rushing back. I took a deep breath. "Simone, I'll think about it. I'll call you back." Before she could protest, I hung up. My hands were shaking. I called Chloe immediately. "Something's happening," I said. "They found out about the house." "Have you told anyone else?" she asked. "No one. Only you and Brenda." "Then they must have been digging." "I don't like this, Elaine. Turn on your cameras. And don't let them in alone." "Do you have someone who can stay with you?" "I'll ask Brenda." "Good. I'll drive down, too. Just in case." When I told Brenda, she didn't hesitate. "I'll pack a bag and be there tonight." True to her word, she arrived that evening, suitcase in hand, concern written across her face. "You're not overreacting," she said firmly as she checked the front locks. "If something feels wrong, it probably is." The next morning, just after breakfast, my phone rang again. Simone's voice came through, syrupy sweet. "Mama, we're on our way. We'll be there in about an hour. Do you need us to bring anything?" I glanced at Brenda, who was already turning on the security monitor. "Simone," I said, "I told you not to come today." "Mama, don't be difficult," she said sharply. "We're already driving. Marcus is with me, and we can't wait to see your place." And then she hung up. Brenda met my eyes. "They're coming anyway." "Let them," I said quietly, though my voice trembled. "This time, I'm ready." We checked the cameras, one at the gate, one on the porch, one in the living room. Chloe arrived half an hour later, laptop and files in hand. "If this goes where I think it's going," she said, "we'll need every second of this recorded." We sat waiting, the sound of waves outside mixing with the faint hum of fear in my chest. Then, just before noon, I heard it, the crunch of tires on gravel. A black SUV stopped in front of my house. Simone stepped out first, dressed too nicely for a casual visit. Marcus followed, his jaw tight, his wife beside him, and a man in a gray suit holding a briefcase. Brenda's face went pale. "That's not a visit, Elaine," she said quietly. "That's an ambush." The knock on the door was sharp, impatient, 3 heavy bangs that echoed through the house. Brenda stood beside me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. "Remember," she whispered, "you're not alone." I took a deep breath and opened the door. Simone was the first to walk in. No greeting. No hug. Her eyes darted around the living room, scanning the walls, the furniture, the ocean view beyond the glass windows. She wasn't here to see me. She was here to assess what she wanted. "Mama," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So, this is the famous beach house." Marcus followed, his wife trailing behind him, her expression stiff and guarded. And then the man in the gray suit stepped forward. His polished shoes clicked against the floor. He adjusted his tie and extended a hand. "Mrs. Porter, I'm Leonard Vance, attorney for your children." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "Attorney?" I repeated slowly. Chloe, who had been seated quietly near the kitchen doorway, stood up and introduced herself coolly. "And I'm Chloe Daniels, Mrs. Porter's legal counsel." "Why don't you explain why you're here, Mr. Vance?" Leonard gave her a tight smile. "Of course. Mrs. Porter, your children are concerned about your well-being. They've informed me that you recently made a large purchase, this property, to be specific, and they're worried you may have been manipulated or taken advantage of." Simone stepped closer. "Mama, we're not trying to upset you," she said in that soft, patronizing tone I knew too well. "We're just worried someone might have convinced you to spend all your savings on a house you don't need." Marcus nodded, his voice firmer. "You could have told us, Mama. We would have helped you make a better decision." I felt heat rising in my chest. "A better decision?" I said slowly. "You mean one that benefits you?" "Please," Leonard interrupted smoothly, opening his briefcase. "Let's not make this emotional. Your children simply want to protect you. We've drafted documents to transfer this property into a family trust, which they will administer on your behalf. You can continue to live here comfortably, but the house will be legally protected from anyone trying to exploit you." Chloe's lips curved into a cold, knowing smile. "In other words, you're asking her to hand over her house." Leonard frowned. "That's not what I said." "It's exactly what you said," Chloe replied. "You're asking an elderly woman to sign away ownership of her own property under the disguise of protection." Simone's voice cracked slightly. "Why are you being so defensive, Mama? We're trying to help you." I stared at her, this woman who once clung to my skirt crying for comfort after nightmares. "Help me?" I whispered. "Where were you on Christmas? On my birthday? On the days I waited by the phone for your voice?" "Mama, don't start with guilt trips," Marcus snapped. Brenda stepped forward. "No one is guilting anyone," she said sharply. "We're asking why you've suddenly shown up with a lawyer, ready with documents your mother never asked for." Simone turned to her, eyes narrowing. "And who exactly are you?" "I'm the person who sold this house to your mother," Brenda said calmly. "And the person she trusted enough to stand by her when her own children didn't." "This is ridiculous," Marcus said, his voice rising. "Mama, tell these strangers to leave so we can talk privately." "No," I said, surprising even myself with how steady my voice sounded. "They stay. And you're going to tell me exactly what this is about." Leonard cleared his throat. "It's simple, Mrs. Porter. If you sign these papers, your children will ensure your financial safety. You'll have peace of mind. In exchange, they'll oversee your property and expenses." "And if I don't sign?" I asked. He hesitated. Then you risk making future legal decisions without protection, decisions that could be challenged later on. Chloe took the papers from him without asking. She flipped through them quickly, her sharp eyes scanning line after line. Then she looked up, her expression hardened. Elaine, she said quietly, if you sign this, you lose everything. They'll have full control. They can sell your home, your possessions, everything, and you won't be able to stop them. Simone's mask slipped. That's not true, she snapped. We'd never do that. Chloe raised a brow. Then why does this clause, she tapped the page, say that the trustees, meaning you two, may dispose of the property if deemed necessary for your mother's care? That's as broad as it gets. You could sell the house tomorrow and claim it was for her own good. Marcus' jaw tightened. You're twisting things. I'm reading them, Chloe said flatly. Simone's voice rose higher. We're doing this because we love you, Mama. We just want what's best for you. I laughed, quietly at first, then louder, the sound breaking somewhere between pain and disbelief. Love me? You can't even remember to call me. You left me alone every Christmas, every birthday, and now you show up with a lawyer claiming you love me? The room went silent. Chloe took a step forward. For your information, everything being said and done here is being recorded. The cameras are on. Leonard turned sharply. That's illegal. It's perfectly legal, Chloe said, her tone icy. This is private property. And if you continue to pressure my client, this recording will go straight to the authorities as evidence of harassment. Simone looked around and saw the tiny red light glowing on the shelf camera. Her face drained of color. You recorded us? Yes, I said softly. Every word. Leonard snapped his briefcase shut. This conversation is over. Chloe crossed her arms. No, it's finished. There's a difference. Simone's sweet tone vanished completely. You'll regret this, Mama, she hissed. When you need us, don't expect us to come running. I looked her straight in the eyes. I've been alone for years, Simone. You leaving won't change a thing. They turned and stormed out, the slam of the door echoing through the quiet house. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Brenda reached out and took my hand. You did the right thing, she whispered. I nodded slowly, though tears blurred my vision. Then why does it still hurt so much? Because, Brenda said softly, you still love them, even after they stopped loving you back. I wiped my tears and looked toward the waves beyond the window. I didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of the fight. Because when greed replaces love, silence is never the end, it's the calm before the storm. The day after they stormed out, the house was painfully quiet again. I sat on the porch with my tea, staring at the sea, trying to convince myself that maybe it was over, that they'd leave me alone now that they'd said what they came to say. But deep down, I knew better. Greed doesn't retreat. It plots. For 2 weeks, I tried to move on. Brenda stayed with me for a few days, insisting I shouldn't be alone, while Chloe handled paperwork to secure the house legally. We tightened every corner, copies of deeds, proof of ownership, digital backups. You did the right thing, Chloe reminded me often. But don't be surprised if they come back, and not with apologies. She was right. One quiet morning, a month later, I opened my mailbox and saw a thick envelope stamped with a law firm's seal, Vance and Wilcox. My stomach dropped before I even tore it open. Inside was a formal letter. Petition for declaration of mental incapacity. The petitioners, Simone Carter and Marcus Porter, hereby request the court to determine that their mother, Elaine Porter, is no longer mentally competent to manage her affairs. My hands trembled. They were trying to have me declared incompetent. If they won, they'd control everything, my house, my money, my life. I called Chloe immediately. They're suing me, I said, my voice cracking. I know, she replied calmly. I received the same notice this morning. It's official. They filed a case. Can they do that? Can they lie like that? Yes, she said, but we're going to fight it. And we're going to win. Her confidence steadied me, but when I hung up, the house suddenly felt smaller, as if the walls were closing in. I sat at my kitchen table for hours, rereading the letter. My children had signed it. They'd stood before a lawyer and claimed their own mother couldn't think for herself. When Brenda arrived that evening, she found me still clutching the papers. They actually did it, I whispered. They're saying I've lost my mind. Brenda's face hardened. Then we'll show them you haven't lost anything, especially your courage. Over the next several weeks, Chloe prepared me like a soldier before battle. We rehearsed every possible question they could ask in court, about my finances, my memory, my decision-making. You'll answer slowly, clearly, and without anger, she told me. They'll try to make you look emotional or confused. Don't let them. She gathered evidence, everything from the house purchase records to my medical reports, video footage from the confrontation, screenshots of Simone's posts, every missed call and text I'd saved. We even arranged evaluations with two specialists, Dr. Wesley King, a cognitive expert, and Dr. Alana Jones, a psychologist, both of whom confirmed that I was completely lucid and emotionally stable. This isn't about your mind, Dr. Alana told me softly after one session. It's about their guilt and their greed. You made a decision they can't control, and they're punishing you for it. Her words sank deep. As the court date approached, the tension grew heavier. Chloe visited every few days, helping me practice my testimony. Brenda cooked dinner and kept me laughing when I wanted to cry. But the night before the hearing, fear crept in again. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had come to this. How the children I'd carried, fed, and sacrificed for could now sit in a courtroom and call me unfit. By morning, I felt like my body was made of glass. Fragile, transparent. But when I saw Chloe's car pull up, something inside me clicked back into place. She stepped out, dressed in a navy suit, her expression calm but fierce. "Ready?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." Brenda joined us at the courthouse for moral support. "Don't forget who you are, Elaine," she whispered as we walked inside. "You're not just a mother they underestimated, you're a woman who built everything she has with her own hands." The courtroom was small, sunlit through high windows. I sat beside Chloe, my palms sweating, as Simone and Marcus entered with Leonard and two strangers, witnesses, perhaps, paid or persuaded. Simone met my eyes for half a second before looking away. Marcus didn't look at me at all. When the judge entered, everyone rose. His gavel struck once. "Case number 2478, Carter and Porter vs. Porter," he announced. And just like that, my life, my sanity, was officially on trial. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. The kind of cold that seeps under your skin, that makes you question whether you belong there at all. I sat beside Chloe, my heart pounding so loudly that I could barely hear the hum of the overhead lights. At the opposite table, Simone and Marcus sat stiffly, dressed in dark suits like strangers at a funeral. My funeral. Between them, Leonard Vance organized his papers, every movement deliberate, confident. I stared at their faces, my children, and wondered how they could look so calm while trying to destroy me. The judge, a man in his 60s with deep lines of weariness across his face, adjusted his glasses. "Let's begin," he said. "Counsel for the petitioners, you may proceed." Leonard rose and began, his voice polished, practiced. "Your Honor, we are here because two loving children fear for their mother's well-being. Mrs. Porter, aged 69, has shown alarming changes in behavior over the past year. She abruptly moved to an isolated coastal property, depleted her savings to purchase it, and has refused contact with her family. Her paranoia, installing cameras, hiring legal representation, suggests mental decline and possible undue influence." I gripped the edge of the table. Paranoia. That was how he described my caution, my survival. Leonard continued, pacing slowly. "This case isn't about greed. It's about concern. These children simply want to ensure their mother's safety before someone else takes advantage of her vulnerability." He turned slightly toward me, as if speaking to a fragile old woman who didn't understand her own name. Sometimes, Your Honor, love means taking difficult steps. Chloe leaned close and whispered, "Let him finish. Then we'll tear it apart." The judge nodded. "You may call your first witness." Leonard smiled. "We call Simone Carter." Simone stood, walked to the witness box, and swore to tell the truth. She looked perfect, neat bun, pressed suit, tears shimmering at the corners of her eyes. I had seen that performance before. "My mother used to be strong," she began, her voice trembling just enough. "But lately, she's been different. Forgetful. Angry. She isolates herself. When Marcus and I tried to talk to her, she accused us of trying to steal from her. It broke our hearts." Leonard nodded sympathetically. "Mrs. Carter, did your mother make any unusual financial decisions recently?" "She spent all her savings, nearly $200,000, on a house she doesn't need," Simone said, shaking her head. "A beach house she bought alone, without telling anyone. We're worried someone manipulated her." "Did you confront her about it?" "Yes. We went to speak with her, but she refused to let us in at first. When we did get inside, there were cameras everywhere. It felt like she didn't trust us anymore. It was disturbing." She sniffled, pretending to wipe away a tear. "We just want to help her." Chloe scribbled something in her notebook, her expression unreadable. Leonard called his next witness, Marcus. He walked to the stand with his usual stoic face, one hand tucked in his pocket like he was doing the court a favor. "My mother's not the same," he said flatly. "She's stubborn now, secretive. We barely hear from her. When I asked her where the money came from for that house, she accused me of wanting her inheritance." "That's not true. We just wanted to make sure she was safe." Leonard nodded. "So your concern is purely her safety?" "Yes, sir." I wanted to scream, "Liar!" But Chloe's hand on my arm anchored me. "Don't," she whispered. "He's doing your work for you." Leonard attempted one final move. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit statements from a licensed psychiatrist who reviewed Mrs. Porter's behavior patterns and concluded potential cognitive decline." Chloe rose instantly. "Objection. The so-called expert has never met or spoken to my client. His opinion is based entirely on biased second-hand accounts. It's hearsay." The judge nodded. "Objection sustained. Witness dismissed." Leonard hesitated. His smooth tone faltered for the first time. "No further witnesses, Your Honor." The judge looked at Chloe. "Defense may proceed." Chloe stood, calm but commanding. "Your Honor, what we have just witnessed is not the concern of loving children, it is the performance of opportunists. And we will prove that now." She clicked her remote, and the courtroom lights dimmed slightly as a screen behind us lit up with the first image, my empty dining table on Christmas morning. The untouched food, the cold coffee, the faint glow of Christmas lights. "This," Chloe said, "is Christmas Day, the day Mrs. Porter waited for her children, who never arrived." A murmur spread across the room. "Next," she continued, showing Simone's social media post. The caption glared across the screen, "Perfect Christmas with the people who matter." Simone's face crumpled. "Over the course of 12 months, Chloe said, her voice growing sharper, these children called their mother a total of 7 times. They never visited her once. But the moment she purchased a house worth $180,000, they showed up uninvited, not with gifts or love, but with a lawyer and pre-drafted documents to transfer ownership of that property into their names." She gestured to the video that followed, the footage from my porch camera. The courtroom fell silent as the confrontation played out, Simone's rising voice, Marcus's impatience, Leonard's coercion, and Chloe herself stepping into the frame to stop them. When the recording ended, the silence was thick enough to choke on. The judge leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Is this authentic footage?" "Taken directly from the property's surveillance system," Chloe said. "Time-stamped and verified." Leonard's color drained. Simone avoided his gaze. Now, Chloe continued, we'll hear from Mrs. Porter herself. My knees trembled as I stood, but I walked to the witness stand anyway. The bailiff swore me in. Mrs. Porter, Chloe said gently, can you tell us, in your own words, why you decided to buy the beach house? I looked at my children, the same faces I once kissed goodnight, and felt my voice steady. Because I was tired of waiting for love from people who had already decided not to give it, I said. I wanted a place where I could live in peace, a place that was mine. Did anyone pressure you into buying it? No, I said firmly. It was my decision. My money. My choice. Leonard rose. Mrs. Porter, isn't it true that you've become paranoid since buying this home? I met his eyes. No. I became cautious. There's a difference. He smirked faintly. And yet, you installed cameras, hired lawyers. Because my own children showed up with legal papers demanding my house, I interrupted. Wouldn't you protect yourself, Mr. Vance? The judge's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. When Chloe called the doctors to testify, their words sealed it. Mrs. Porter, said Dr. Wesley King, is mentally sound, cognitively sharp, and remarkably resilient. There is no sign of decline whatsoever. Then Dr. Alana Jones spoke. What she's showing is not instability. It's strength. She made a healthy decision to reclaim her life from emotional neglect. Chloe turned back to the judge. Your Honor, this case is not about a mother's competence. It's about greed disguised as concern. It's about two grown children who only remember their mother exists when her money does. The courtroom was silent except for the faint scratching of the judge's pen. Then he looked up. I've heard enough, he said. I held my breath. This petition is denied, he declared. Mrs. Porter is clearly of sound mind and full legal competence. Furthermore, I find this case frivolous and motivated by financial self-interest. All court costs will be borne by the petitioners. And let this serve as a warning, any further attempts to harass or manipulate your mother will face legal consequences. The gavel struck. Case closed. For a moment, I couldn't move. Then Chloe turned to me and whispered, you won. I didn't answer. I just breathed, really breathed, for the first time in years. Simone's face was red, her jaw trembling with anger. Marcus looked away, his eyes fixed on the floor. Leonard packed up quickly, avoiding my gaze. As I stood to leave, I felt something strange, not triumph, not revenge. Just relief. The chains I hadn't even realized I'd been wearing all my life had finally broken. When the gavel fell, it didn't just end a case, it ended a lifetime of silence. As we stepped out of the courthouse, sunlight spilled across the marble steps. I blinked against it, feeling the weight of everything I had survived lift, piece by piece. Beside me, Chloe carried her briefcase like a sword she'd just laid down, and Brenda walked on my other side, holding my arm as if afraid I might still crumble. You did it, Brenda whispered. No, I said softly. We did. The world outside seemed brighter, almost too bright, the kind of light you notice only after years of sitting in the dark. Cars passed, people chatted, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel invisible. Chloe stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned to me. It's over, Elaine. You're free now, legally and emotionally. I smiled faintly. Free, I repeated, tasting the word. That feels strange to say at my age. It shouldn't, she said gently. You earned it. We parted ways outside. Chloe headed to her car, promising to finalize a few papers for me, and Brenda and I drove back to the beach house in comfortable silence. The sky was clear, the sea calm, as if the ocean itself knew I had finally found peace. When we arrived home, I opened the porch door and let the breeze rush in. It smelled like salt and new beginnings. I turned to Brenda. You can finally go home and rest. You've done enough for me. She shook her head. I'll stay one more night. Just to make sure you sleep. That evening, we ate quietly on the porch, simple soup, bread, and tea. The sound of waves filled the spaces between our words. "How do you feel?" she asked eventually. "Tired," I admitted. "But it's the good kind of tired, the kind that comes after surviving something you thought might break you." Brenda nodded. "You faced them with grace." "Most people would have screamed or begged." "I've spent enough of my life begging," I said, staring at the horizon. "Begging to be remembered, to be loved, to matter. I won't do that again." When night came, I slept deeply for the first time in months. No restless dreams, no replay of cruel words, just quiet. The next morning, I woke to sunlight brushing across the floorboards. I made coffee, opened every window, and walked barefoot onto the porch. The tide was high, glittering in the gold of early light. The air smelled of salt and promise. And then I cried, not the way I used to, with grief and loneliness, but with release. Because it was over. The fear. The fighting. The waiting. Everything that had held me hostage for years was gone. I wasn't anyone's burden anymore. I wasn't the woman they pitied or ignored. I was simply Elaine Porter, a woman who had taken back her life. When Chloe stopped by later that week with final papers, she smiled as she handed me the folder. "You're untouchable now," she said. "The house is fully secured in your name. No one can take it from you, not even family." I nodded, my voice low. "Thank you, Chloe. Not just for the case, for believing me." She smiled. "You didn't need me to believe you, Elaine. You just needed someone to remind you that you weren't crazy for wanting peace." After she left, I stood alone on the porch, listening to the steady heartbeat of the waves. I thought of Simone and Marcus, of their anger, their greed, their silence. And for once, I didn't feel hatred. Just acceptance. Maybe one day they would understand what they'd lost. Maybe not. But it no longer defined me. I had won something bigger than a lawsuit, I had won myself. As the sun sank below the horizon, I whispered into the breeze, "This is my life now." And for the first time in decades, those words didn't feel like defiance. They felt like truth. It has been 2 years since that day in court. 2 years since I stood trembling before a judge, terrified my children would take away everything I had left. And yet, as I sit here now on my porch overlooking the ocean, the wind warm against my face, it all feels like a distant dream. The beach house, my house, has become my sanctuary. Every morning, I wake before sunrise to the sound of waves brushing against the shore. I make a pot of coffee, open the windows, and let the light spill across the wooden floors. The sea breeze carries the smell of salt and jasmine, and the gulls circle lazily above the water. It's a sound that reminds me that peace isn't loud, it's steady, constant, and real. Brenda still lives nearby. She visits almost every weekend with a loaf of bread or a new book she insists I just have to read. Sometimes, we sit for hours without speaking, just watching the tide go in and out. Silence used to make me feel small. Now, it feels like companionship. Chloe still checks in too. "Just making sure no one's trying anything," she jokes, though I know she still feels protective of me. She's become more than a lawyer, she's family. The kind that chooses you, not the kind that abandons you. As for Simone and Marcus, there's been nothing. Not a call. Not a message. Not even on my birthday. The first year, I kept expecting to hear from them. I'd catch myself glancing at my phone, wondering if maybe they'd finally realized what they'd done. But now, I no longer wait. I no longer ache. I've learned that sometimes peace doesn't come when people say sorry. It comes when you stop waiting for them to. Last Christmas, I invited Brenda, Chloe, and a few of my neighbors over for dinner. We laughed until midnight, the house glowing with candlelight and music. It wasn't the kind of Christmas I used to dream of, full of children and grandchildren, but it was better. Because this time everyone at that table wanted to be there. One afternoon in early spring, while walking along the beach, I met a woman about my age. Her name was Ruth. She stopped me shyly and said, "You're Mrs. Porter, right? I read about your case in the paper. You were so brave." We talked for hours that day, two women who'd been forgotten by the people they loved most. She told me about her own children who rarely called, about the quiet in her house that sometimes felt like punishment. When she asked how I knew it was time to let go, I told her the truth. When the pain of holding on becomes greater than the fear of being alone, that's when you know. And the moment you choose yourself, truly choose yourself, the loneliness begins to fade. She smiled through tears and whispered, "Maybe it's time I did the same." I hugged her and said, "You'll know when it is." Since then, Ruth and I have become friends. She visits often, bringing her dog, Milo, who runs circles around my porch like he owns the place. There's laughter here now, the kind I thought I'd never hear again. Sometimes, when I walk along the beach at sunset, I think of Simone and Marcus. Not with anger anymore, but with a soft sadness. I hope they're well. I hope they've found peace in their own way. Because forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't mean letting someone back into your life. It means freeing yourself from the weight of hating them. I still get letters from Aaliyah, my granddaughter. Handwritten, careful, secret. She tells me about school, about her dreams, about how she wants to study marine biology. She always ends her letters the same way. "I love you, Grandma. I'm proud of you." Those words are enough to fill all the spaces her mother and uncle left empty. And so, I stay here, by the water, surrounded by people who see me for who I am. Not what I can give them, not what they can take from me, just me. Every morning, I remind myself, it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to choose peace. Sometimes, as the sun sinks below the horizon and the sea glows gold and crimson, I whisper the same words that carried me through the darkest years of my life. I was invisible once. But not anymore. And the ocean, faithful and endless, whispers back, as if it remembers too. If you're listening to this, maybe you've felt what I once felt, forgotten, invisible, unloved. Maybe you've spent years giving your best to people who never looked back. If so, I want you to know this, it's never too late to begin again. I used to believe that love meant sacrifice. That being a good mother meant saying yes even when it broke me. I thought if I gave enough, my children would see me. That one day they'd turn around and say, "Thank you, Mama. We couldn't have done it without you." But life doesn't always give us the endings we hope for. Sometimes, it gives us silence instead, and that silence teaches us what love isn't. The day I bought the beach house, I thought I was running away. But now, I know I was running home, not to a place, but to myself. People often ask me if I regret it. If I wish things had turned out differently. Yes, I wish my children had chosen love over greed. I wish they had seen the woman behind the wallet. But if losing them was the price of finding peace, then I'd pay it 100 times again. Because in losing them, I found myself. Now, I wake up each morning and thank the ocean for its honesty. The sea doesn't pretend. It gives and it takes. It reminds me that peace isn't the absence of pain, it's the courage to keep breathing through it. Some evenings, when the sun sets low and the waves glow like melted gold, I sit on the porch and smile at the life I rebuilt. Brenda laughs beside me, Chloe's voice echoes from the phone, and sometimes Ruth stops by with Milo, her joyful little dog. There's warmth, there's laughter, there's light, all the things I thought I'd lost forever. I even keep a spare chair on my porch. Not because I expect Simone or Marcus to visit, but because I've learned to leave space for forgiveness. Not the kind that asks people back into your life, but the quiet kind that frees your heart to love again, even if it's just yourself. So, if you ever find yourself alone on a holiday, staring at an empty table, wondering if you still matter, hear me when I say this, you do. You always have. Your worth isn't measured by who calls you, or who forgets you, or who chooses you. Your worth lies in the fact that you keep standing up, even when no one claps for you. Because one day, you'll realize, the love you were waiting for was never meant to come from them. It was meant to come from you. And when that day comes, your world will open like the sea, wide, wild, and endless. I spent every Christmas alone until I bought a beach house. Now, I spend every day surrounded by peace. And maybe that's the greatest gift of all, learning that the best kind of love is the kind you finally give yourself. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in this person's place? I'd really love to hear your opinion. Big hugs, and see you next time.